The words cut sharper than any diamond. Don't waste her time showing her diamonds. She can't even afford the box they come in. The boutique fell silent. Even the soft classical music froze mid-note. Ava Carter stood in the middle of Sterling and Rowe fine jewelers, her mother's voice echoing like a blade. For a moment, she tried to pretend it didn't sting, but it did. Every word found its mark. Around them, customers looked away, unsure whether to pity or enjoy the spectacle. Her mother, Linda Carter, smiled thinly and turned to the clerk. "You can show me the new arrivals," she said, pearls glinting beneath the lights. "My daughter's just tagging along." Ava's throat tightened, but she managed a calm, even tone. "Actually, I came here for something specific." Linda's smirk deepened. "What, a catalog?" she asked mockingly. The young clerk shifted awkwardly, unsure which woman to attend to. Ava ignored her mother and faced the clerk directly. "Ava Carter. I placed an order last month. It should have arrived this week." Before the clerk could respond, a tall man in a tailored suit approached. The boutique manager. His eyes lit up the moment he saw her. "Miss Carter," he said warmly. "We've been expecting you. Your custom diamond line from Paris just arrived this morning. We've prepared a private room for your inspection." For a breathless second, no one moved. Linda's lips parted, her polished confidence slipping. "Excuse me," she stammered. "There must be a mistake." The manager shook his head. "None, ma'am. Miss Carter is one of our private clients." The silence that followed gleamed brighter than the diamonds in their glass cases. The clerk blinked in surprise. Nearby shoppers turned to watch, curiosity sharpening like camera flashes. Ava caught the flicker of disbelief in her mother's eyes, that subtle unraveling of pride disguised as shock. Linda had spent years mocking her daughter's art, telling friends she was wasting her youth drawing useless pretty things. But now, here she stood, surrounded by jewels her daughter had designed. Ava's heart pounded, not from revenge, but release. She followed the manager through the mirrored hallway and into the private room glowing with crystal light. Inside, the table shimmered beneath a chandelier. The pieces looked unreal, necklaces, bracelets, rings, all shaped from sketches that had once lived in the quiet of Ava's studio. The manager smiled proudly. "Lorne himself called you a prodigy," he said. "Your attention to detail is extraordinary." Ava touched a necklace, her fingertips trembling as they traced the engraved initials AC. She smiled softly. "Thank you," she whispered. In the reflection of the glass, she saw her mother's figure appear in the doorway, pale and frozen. "You were right, Mom," Ava said quietly, still facing the jewels. "I can't afford to buy these, but I can design them." The silence that followed was louder than applause. The sound of heels clicked sharply against marble as Ava walked out. Her mother's voice trailed close behind, low, furious, almost trembling. "Ava, what was that stunt supposed to prove?" Ava didn't answer at first. The automatic door slid open, letting in a rush of cool Manhattan air. She stepped outside, the city's noise mixing with the fading echoes of her mother's anger. Turning under the streetlight, she finally faced her. "It wasn't a stunt, Mom. It's my career." Linda's face hardened. "Since when do you have a career? You're telling me those ridiculous prices are because of you?" Ava's voice was calm, but steady. "Yes. Every design, every sketch, every sleepless night you called a waste of time, that's mine." Linda blinked, her face pale with disbelief. "You should have told me," she said finally. Ava let out a bitter laugh. "You wouldn't have listened. You never do unless there's a price tag attached." Her mother's lips trembled, struggling to rebuild her usual composure. "I wanted you to be secure, Ava. To have stability." Ava stepped closer. "No, you wanted me to live your version of stability. Marry rich, stay silent, smile at parties. You never cared what made me happy." A passing taxi splashed water near the curb, and for a moment, the streetlight painted her mother's face half green, half shadow. "You sound just like your father," Linda muttered. "Always blaming someone else." The mention of her father hit like a punch. "Dad believed in me," Ava said softly. He supported my art until the day he died. You erased that part of him because it didn't fit your perfect picture. Linda's jaw tightened, her silence heavier than any argument. Ava took a deep breath. You know, Mom, for years I thought success would make you love me differently. But it won't, and that's okay now. Linda's voice cracked slightly. Ava, wait. Don't walk away like this. Ava turned under the glow of the streetlight, her eyes calm but resolute. I'm not walking away. I'm walking forward. Her mother's heels clicked faster as she followed, frustration laced with fear. Ava, everyone was staring at me in there. You humiliated me. Ava paused, her hand on the car door. Now you know what it feels like, she said quietly. For a long second, Linda said nothing. The city swallowed her silence, taxis honking, lights flickering, people rushing past, all indifferent witnesses to their reckoning. Ava got into the car, her chest tight, but lighter than it had ever felt. As she drove off, tears blurred the skyline. They weren't from sadness, but from release, the kind that comes when you stop asking for permission to exist. The jewelry store lights glowed behind her in the rearview mirror, each sparkle a reminder of how far she'd come. Sometimes, the most beautiful revenge wasn't revenge at all, it was rising where they said you couldn't. Ava whispered those words to herself, letting them settle like a vow. The city stretched wide before her, full of noise and promise. She didn't need her mother's validation anymore. What she needed was to keep creating, to keep building a world that reflected her light, not her mother's shadow. 2 months later, the Paris skyline shimmered outside the floor-to-ceiling windows of her hotel suite. Morning light blended with city haze, and in the reflection, Ava saw herself standing between sunrise and success. Behind her, the showroom buzzed with activity, stylists, photographers, and curators preparing for her debut collection, Lumiere by Ava Carter. The same. Hands that once scrubbed dishes in diners now held a portfolio worth millions. Yet, she still felt the echo of every doubt she had overcome. As she adjusted a necklace shaped like a falling star, her assistant Mia rushed in, breathless. Ava, you won't believe who just RSVP'd late to the gala. Ava smiled faintly. Another critic? Mia shook her head, holding a card. Linda Carter, your mother. Ava's smile faded. For a heartbeat, her pulse stopped. What? She asked quietly. Mia nodded, uncertain. She called the main office herself, said she's flying in tonight. Apparently, she told the staff she's your manager. Ava exhaled slowly, forcing a steady breath. She shouldn't have been surprised. Her mother had an instinct for appearing when the spotlight was bright enough to sting. Let's prepare as planned, Ava said finally. No changes. Mia hesitated, then nodded. You got it. When the door closed, Ava looked out at the glittering Paris skyline. Her reflection shimmered faintly on the glass. No longer the girl who used to shrink, but the woman who had built something her mother could no longer dismiss. That evening, the grand ballroom of the Lauren Fashion Gala glowed like a dream. Gold chandeliers dripped light across crystal tables, and the air hummed with perfume and quiet envy. Cameras flashed. Reporters whispered her name. Ava felt calm in the center of it all, grounded, steady. Then, a murmur rippled through the crowd. She turned and there she was. Linda Carter entered in an emerald gown that screamed old money, her diamonds too loud, her smile perfectly practiced. Their eyes met across the room, and for a moment, neither moved. Ava stood taller. The old fear didn't rise this time. Only clarity. Linda approached with deliberate grace, each step measured like choreography. Ava, she said warmly, extending a manicured hand. You look stunning. The papers are calling you the next big thing in luxury design. I suppose I should start saying, I always knew you'd make it. Ava looked at the outstretched hand, then back at her mother's face. Funny, she said calmly. You once said my designs would end up at flea markets. Linda's smile didn't waver, but her eyes flickered. I was wrong, she replied quickly. We all make mistakes. But tonight isn't the time for grudges. Everyone here knows we're family. Let's just act like it. Those words hit harder, than intended. Act like it. That had been Linda's motto all her life. Act happy. Act perfect. Act successful. Never real. Ava straightened, her voice even but sharp. I don't need to act anymore, Mom. Before Linda could respond, the announcer's voice boomed through the hall. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ava Carter, designer of this year's exclusive Lumiere collection. Applause erupted like thunder. Cameras flashed. Her name filled the room louder than her mother's judgment ever had. Ava stepped toward the stage, feeling the light wrap around her like armor. From the stage, the crowd sparkled beneath her. Linda stood near the front, motionless, pride and disbelief mixing on her face. Ava gripped the microphone, her voice calm and clear. This collection, she began, is dedicated to everyone who's ever been told they weren't enough. Sometimes, the people closest to us can't see our light until it blinds them. A stunned silence followed. Then gasps. Then applause. Deep, unrestrained applause that shook the hall. Cameras zoomed in as Linda lowered her gaze, blinking back tears she'd never show. For the first time, Ava saw something new in her mother's eyes. Not defeat, but recognition. When the lights dimmed and the show ended, Ava stepped backstage, her hands trembling. It wasn't nerves anymore. It was freedom pressing against her ribs. The collection sold out before the night was over. Critics called her work emotion wrapped in crystal. Lauren himself toasted her with champagne. To the future of modern elegance, he said, and the crowd cheered. But as the music faded and people drifted toward the exits, Ava noticed Linda standing alone near the edge of the ballroom, away from the cameras. For once, she didn't look like the invincible socialite. She looked small. Mia rushed over, glowing with excitement. Ava, you did it. Lauren's team already wants a second collection. Ava smiled faintly. That's wonderful, Mia. Give me a moment, okay? Her assistant nodded and darted away. Ava crossed the marble floor, the soft click of her heels echoing against the silence left behind. When her mother turned, her expression wasn't defensive. It was almost tender. You were amazing up there, Linda said quietly. Thank you, Ava replied, her voice calm but unreadable. Linda hesitated, her words shaky. I shouldn't have said those things at the store or before that. I thought I was protecting you. Ava folded her arms, not out of anger but restraint.
No, Mom.
You were protecting yourself from being embarrassed by a daughter who didn't fit your version of success. Linda's eyes glistened. Maybe you're right, she whispered. I was scared. Your father believed in you, but I couldn't see what he saw. After he died, I didn't want to lose control of everything. Ava's tone softened slightly. You lost control the moment you tried to cage what wasn't yours. You didn't lose me because I failed, Mom. You lost me because I stopped needing your approval. The words settled between them like dust after a storm, quiet, unavoidable, real. Linda looked away, her shoulders trembling just slightly. I don't know how to fix this, she said finally. Ava exhaled. You don't have to, she replied. Just don't tear me down anymore. Silence. Then, in a voice so soft it almost disappeared, Linda said, I'm proud of you. The words hung in the air, fragile but true. For a heartbeat, Ava couldn't speak. It wasn't a full apology, but it was the first time her mother had ever said it. That alone made her chest ache. Ava smiled faintly, eyes glimmering. That's all I ever wanted to hear. They stood there for a long moment, not as rivals, not as parent and child locked in old wars, but as two women trying to meet halfway. The ballroom lights flickered softer. The crowd had thinned, and faint laughter drifted from the hallway. When Ava finally walked away, she didn't feel the need to look back. Some chapters close without drama. They just end quietly, with truth. Later that night, Ava slipped out onto the balcony, overlooking the Seine. The city glimmered beneath her like a living jewel. She leaned on the rail, breathing in the Paris air, cool, sweet, alive. Behind her, the music softened as guests began to leave. Mia joined her, carrying 2 glasses of champagne. To your first collection, she said cheerfully, raising her glass. Ava smiled. And to the last time I ever let anyone make me feel small. They clinked glasses, laughter blending with the hum of the city. For the first time in years, Ava didn't feel the ache to prove herself. She had already done it. When she returned to New York a week later, her apartment felt different, lighter. Success hadn't changed her furniture or her view, but it had changed the way she saw herself. On her desk, a single envelope waited. No return address, just her name written in elegant script. Her pulse quickened as she opened it. Inside was a card with a single line. For every diamond you create, remember you're the rarest one of all. Love, Mom. Ava stared at the words until they blurred. A tear slid down her cheek, quiet and uninvited. She set the letter down gently and sank into her chair. Maybe her mother was changing. Maybe not. But it didn't matter. Ava had already learned the most valuable lesson of her life, that some people will never see your worth until the world does first. And by then, their opinion no longer matters. She leaned back, staring at the sketches pinned across her studio wall, each design a fragment of her journey. Rejection, resilience, and rebirth turned into beauty. Every curve of every jewel told her story, without a single word. The city outside buzzed, alive with horns and laughter. Ava switched off the lights, leaving only the glow of the moon spilling across her desk. In that quiet, she whispered to herself, "You did it, Ava. You did it without them." And somewhere deep inside, she finally believed it. She stood, stretching her tired arms, and walked toward the window. The skyline glittered like Paris had, not because of the lights, but because she could finally see her reflection in them, not as someone's daughter or disappointment, but as herself. A designer, a survivor, a woman who had turned her pain into something eternal. She reached for a small velvet box on her work table and opened it. Inside was her newest creation, a silver ring shaped like a teardrop of light. It wasn't for sale. It wasn't for show. It was for her. She slipped it onto her finger, smiling softly. "This one's for me," she whispered. The city lights shimmered back, as if nodding in agreement. For once, the silence around her wasn't empty. It was peace. Weeks later, Ava found herself back at Sterling and Row, the same boutique where everything had begun. This time, she wasn't a shadow following her mother's footsteps. The manager greeted her with a respectful nod. "Miss Carter, your designs have become our top sellers," he said proudly. "The Lauren line is transforming the brand." Ava smiled. "That's wonderful to hear." As she walked past the displays, she saw her sketches come to life. Necklaces that once existed only in her imagination now adorning posters and velvet stands. She no longer felt the sting of that memory. Only gratitude. Outside, the winter air bit her cheeks. A group of young art students passed by, their sketchbooks tucked under their arms, laughing about dreams. One of them stopped, recognizing her. "Are you Ava Carter?" she asked shyly. "Your story's all over Vogue. You're the reason I didn't quit my fashion program." Ava smiled, humbled. "Then promise me you won't," she said warmly. "Let them laugh. One day, they'll wear what you create." The girl's face lit up. "I will," she said. They parted ways, and Ava felt something ease in her heart, the circle finally closing. That evening, Ava met Mia for dinner at a quiet rooftop bistro. Paris had given her fame, but New York still felt like home. As they clinked glasses again, Mia grinned. "So, what's next? A second collection?" Ava nodded, thoughtful. "Yes. But this time, I'm naming it Reverie, after the dream that started it all." Mia smiled. "I like that." Ava leaned back, gazing at the city lights. "You know," she said softly, "I used to think success would change everything. But it only changes you. You become the version of yourself you always needed to be." Later that night, Ava walked home under the hum of streetlights, her heels clicking against the pavement. She passed a jewelry billboard featuring her name. For the first time, she didn't flinch at her reflection beside it. The woman looking back wasn't searching for validation. She was standing in it. Her phone buzzed, a message from her mother. "Dinner soon? Just us?" Ava smiled faintly. She didn't know where they'd go from here, but maybe that was okay. Healing wasn't loud or quick. It was a quiet decision to keep trying. At home, she placed her sketchbook on the table and flipped to a blank page. The pencil felt lighter in her hand this time. Outside, New York sparkled endlessly. She began to draw, not jewels, but light itself, curling across the page like a promise. In that stillness, Ava finally understood. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't proving them wrong. It's proving yourself right. She smiled, signed her initials at the bottom, AC, and whispered, "Here's to rising again." The city shimmered back, like applause. If you value stories of respect, dignity, and justice, please subscribe. It means more than you know, and it lets me keep sharing the lessons life has carved into me.